Everyone thinks they know the story of the iPhone. Steve Jobs, in a single moment of genius, unveiled a device that changed the world. But that's not the whole story. Not even close. The real story of the iPhone doesn't start with a genius. It starts with a disaster. A spectacular failure so embarrassing, Jobs himself was the one who killed it. This is how Apple's most humiliating flop held the secret to its greatest success. To understand the disaster, you have to understand the dream. Think back to the late 1980s. Computers were beige boxes stuck on desks. They were powerful, sure, but they were anchors. The idea of carrying your digital life in your pocket? That was pure science fiction. Over at Apple, Steve Jobs was gone, ousted from the very company he co-founded. In his place was John Sculley, the former Pepsi executive famous for asking Jobs, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" Now at the helm, Sculley needed a grand vision of his own. He found it in a concept so forward-thinking it was almost absurd. It wasn't Sculley's idea alone. The project actually began as a skunkworks operation in 1987, led by an engineer named Steve Sackerman. But Sculley became its biggest champion. He even coined the term for what they were building, the Personal Digital Assistant, or PDA. It was a revolutionary idea. A pocket-sized computer to organize your life, take notes, and connect to the world. Sculley commissioned a concept video called The Knowledge Navigator, showing a professor in the far future of 2011 talking to a bow-tied digital butler on a folding tablet. This was the vision. A device that wouldn't just crunch numbers, but would know you. It was brilliant, ambitious, and set the stage for one of the most infamous failures in tech history. The code name for this dream, Newton. The Newton project was a moonshot, and from the start, the ambition just kept growing. Early prototypes were massive, A4-sized slates with projected price tags of over $6,000. This wasn't just a digital notepad. It was supposed to be the next leap in computing. The biggest challenge was input. How could a device without a keyboard be useful? The answer was radical: handwriting recognition. The Newton was supposed to read your scribbles as perfectly as a person. This was its killer feature, the magic trick that would make the world forget keyboards. To pull this off, Apple made a decision that would, decades later, prove to be one of the most important in its history. They needed a special kind of processor, one that was incredibly powerful but also sipped battery, a combination that just didn't exist in the mainstream chip world. So, Apple looked across the pond to a small British company called Acorn Computers. Acorn had been developing its own efficient processor design. In November 1990, Apple, Acorn, and another company formed a joint venture, Advanced Risk Machines Limited, or as we know it today, ARM. For a $3 million investment, Apple took a massive 43% stake, betting the entire future of the Newton on this new architecture. They were co-creating a super-efficient brain from scratch, just for their PDA. With the new ARM chip at its core, the Newton MessagePad was finally shown to the world on May 29, 1992, creating a media frenzy. It looked sleek, futuristic, and promised to untether us from our desks. The hype was enormous. The only problem? The device wasn't actually ready. When it finally shipped over a year later, on August 3, 1993, the world discovered the tragic, fatal flaw at its heart. The Apple Newton didn't just fail. It became a punchline. After years of hype, the device that finally hit the market was a spectacular disappointment, crippled by a trifecta of failures. First, the price. The Newton MessagePad started at $699, which is around $1,500 in today's money. This wasn't an impulse buy. It was a serious investment in what was essentially an accessory for your real computer. For that price, it needed to be perfect. It wasn't. Second, the hardware was clumsy. It was too bulky for a pocket, and its battery life was notoriously short. The first model, the MessagePad 100, ran on a 20 MHz ARM 610 processor that struggled to keep up with the software's demands. While simpler, cheaper competitors like the Palm Pilot started gaining ground, the Newton felt like a beautiful, expensive brick. But the most catastrophic failure, the one that sealed its fate, was its signature feature: handwriting recognition. The very magic trick that was supposed to sell millions became a national joke. Rushed to market, the software was shockingly inaccurate, turning simple notes into gibberish. The media was ruthless. The Newton's inability to understand writing became a running gag. The most famous jab came from The Simpsons episode, Lisa on Ice, where a bully writes "beat up Martin" on his Newton, only for it to be translated as "eat up Martha." In frustration, he throws the device at Martin's head. That one cartoon clip did more damage than 1,000 bad reviews. The comic strip Doonesbury also famously mocked it for weeks, with one strip coining the gibberish phrase "egg freckles," which became a symbol of the Newton's problems. The dream was dead. Apple promised a pocket genius. They delivered an expensive, clunky device that couldn't even read. Later models dramatically improved the hardware and software, but it was too late. The damage was done. The Newton was a commercial disaster. In 1997, the unthinkable happened. Apple, teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, bought Steve Jobs' company. Next, bringing its founder back into the fold. The company he returned to was a mess, with a confusing product line and bleeding money. Jobs knew he had to be ruthless. One of his first acts was to take an axe to the portfolio. Just before he returned, the Newton division had been spun off into its own subsidiary, Newton Incorporated. On February 27, 1998, Jobs shut the whole thing down. For the small, passionate community of Newton users, it was a betrayal. For Jobs, it was a necessity. He was famously critical of the device and its reliance on a stylus, reportedly quipping years later, "We're born with 10 styluses. Our fingers." He saw the Newton as a symbol of the misguided management that had taken over after he left. Publicly, Jobs dismissed it, but he also recognized the talent trapped inside the failed project. According to one account, he later said, "My gut was that there was some really good technology, but it was effed up by mismanagement. By shutting it down, I freed up some good engineers who could work on new mobile devices." And that's exactly what he did. Jobs didn't just bury the Newton. He salvaged its most valuable parts for a future he was just beginning to imagine. He took control of its legacy. The tragic hero was dead, but its ghost was about to get its revenge, because hidden inside this colossal failure were the 3 secret ingredients for the iPhone. You'd think the story ends with failure, but this is where it gets interesting. The Newton had to die so the iPhone could be born. It left behind a hidden legacy, its DNA scattered throughout Apple, waiting for Jobs to piece it all back together. First and most important was the processor, the brain. Remember that risky bet Apple made on that tiny British company, ARM? That decision, made for a failed PDA, turned out to be a multi-billion-dollar masterstroke. The ARM architecture was built for low-power, high-efficiency computing, exactly what a mobile device needs. While the rest of the industry focused on power-hungry Intel chips, Apple had secretly co-owned the perfect key to the future of mobile. As Apple struggled financially in the late 90s, the company began selling off its ARM shares over time, providing crucial infusions of cash that helped it survive. But crucially, Apple retained the license to use the ARM architecture. When it came time to build the iPod, the choice of processor was obvious. It ran on an ARM chip. A few years later, for the iPhone, Apple began designing its own custom chips based on the very architecture it helped create for the Newton. Every single A-series and M-series chip in today's iPhones and Macs is a direct descendant of that work. The second secret was the software. The handwriting recognition was a joke, but the ideas behind it were revolutionary. The Newton OS had features like data detectors, an early form of AI that understood context. Write lunch with Jeff tomorrow, and it would offer to create a calendar event. Sound familiar? It's the conceptual ancestor of the intelligence baked into iOS, where tapping an address opens maps. There's an even more direct link. A group of ex-Apple developers, some from the Newton project, founded a company called Pixo. In 2001, when Apple needed an operating system for its secret new music player, they hired Pixo. The original iPod software was built by the Newton's spiritual children. Finally, the third secret was the lesson. The Newton's failure taught Steve Jobs exactly what not to do. The Eat Up Martha mockery left a deep scar on Apple's psyche. It became a cautionary tale inside the company, a reminder of what happens when you release a product with a flawed input method. This obsession with getting the input right led directly to Jobs' rejection of the stylus and his relentless push for a flawless, finger-driven, capacitive multi-touch screen. The Newton was complex, so the iPhone had to be simple. The Newton screen was frustrating, so the iPhone screen had to feel like magic. By 2007, all the pieces were in place. The ghost of the Newton was about to be reborn. When Steve Jobs stood on stage and introduced the iPhone, he presented it as three revolutionary devices in one. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator. But it was secretly a fourth thing. It was the Newton done right. Think about it. It was a handheld computer that fit in your pocket. It had no physical keyboard, relying entirely on a touchscreen. It was powered by a super-efficient ARM-based processor, a direct descendant of the chip Apple had created for its failed PDA. Its software was filled with intelligent features that traced their conceptual lineage back to the Newton's OS. And its flawless multi-touch interface was born directly from the lessons learned from the Newton's humiliating failure with the stylus. Jobs had taken the grand, ambitious vision of John Scully and filtered it through his own obsession with simplicity and perfection. Where the Newton was big, the iPhone was sleek. Where the Newton was complicated, the iPhone was intuitive. Where the Newton had failed to understand a stylus, the iPhone responded magically to the human finger. The Newton promised a revolution and delivered a punchline. The iPhone promised the same revolution and delivered the future. It was the culmination of a 20-year journey. A journey that started not with a moment of genius, but with a spectacular, world-class failure. The Apple Newton was a disaster. It was mocked, ridiculed, and ultimately killed by Apple's own returning founder. But history has a funny way of turning failures into foundations. The Newton pioneered the very idea of a personal digital assistant. It forced the creation of the ARM processor architecture that now powers virtually every smartphone on the planet. It provided cash from the ARM stake sale that helped save Apple, and it taught the company the brutal lessons it needed to finally get it right. The iPhone wasn't born in a vacuum. It stands on the shoulders of a giant flop. It is the secret triumph of Apple's most embarrassing failure. So the next time you hold an iPhone, remember the story everyone gets wrong. Remember the bulky, beautiful, disastrous device that had to die so your smartphone could live. Remember the Newton,